Station ES always sounded like a place that never slept. Even at the slowest hours, it hummed with soft engine noise, distant announcements, rolling luggage, and the low voices of travelers from 100 worlds. Light panels in the ceiling shifted through calm colors meant to reduce stress. The air smelled faintly of clean metal, warm coffee, and whatever spices the food vendors used to lure customers who were tired of ration bars. Elias Mercer stood near Gate 9 with a tablet in his hand and a half-finished cup of tea that had gone lukewarm. He worked as a cultural liaison for the station, part customer service, part translator helper, part please don't panic, this is normal specialist. On paper, it was an easy job. In reality, it was a job that required him to notice things people did not say out loud. He watched the crowd move like water around pillars and kiosks. A trio of Telnari drifted past in their floating harnesses, their long sleeves fluttering. A short, armored Gresh merchant argued with a vending unit that refused to accept his credits. A family of humans in matching travel jackets sat together, passing around snacks and whispering about what they would do when they reached the ocean planet in the brochures. Elias tried to focus on his schedule. He had messages to answer, a small report to write, and a shift that still had hours left. But his eyes kept lifting, scanning without thinking. It was a habit. The station was safe, yes, but fear could still happen. Confusion could still happen. A small misunderstanding could become a loud scene. Elias was good at stepping in before it reached that point. That was when he noticed the pause. It was not a full stop, not like an alarm or an accident. It was more like a quiet hiccup in the rhythm of the terminal. A group walking by slowed, then widened their path. A couple standing near the gate shifted closer to their bags. Two alien travelers who had been laughing stopped and glanced toward the arrival's walkway. Elias followed their gaze. A figure stepped out of the corridor that connected to the docking lanes. At first, Elias thought it was a tall human wearing a strange, hooded cloak made of reflective material. But as the figure moved into brighter light, the cloak was not cloth. It was something like thin, shimmering filaments that floated around her, never fully touching the ground. They moved as if in a slow breeze, though the station's air system was calm. She was an alien woman, or at least Elias assumed woman, by the shape, the posture, the gentle way she held herself. Her skin glowed softly, not like a light bulb, but like moonlight on pale stone. Around her head drifted faint tendrils of light, almost like slow sparks in water. She carried no large bags, only a small case held close to her chest. People made room without being asked, and not in the polite way, in the way a crowd parts around something it does not understand. Elias felt his own heart tighten. Not with fear exactly, but with a cautious awareness. Station ES had seen rare species before. It had seen new ambassadors, private researchers, even a few deep space monks who never spoke. But this was different, not because she looked dangerous. Because she looked unknown in a way that the station's usual systems were not prepared for. He glanced at his tablet and opened the arrivals list for Gate 9. No one matched her description. He checked the station briefings from the last week. Nothing. There was a corner of his mind that waited for the translation system to ping her species tag. It didn't. She moved toward the seating area near the gate, where rows of benches faced the glass wall that looked out onto a docking ring. The benches were busy, but not full. A few empty spots remained, and she seemed to aim for them as if she had done this many times before. As she got closer, the empty spots vanished. A Vesk traveler who had been about to sit down stopped, made a small clicking sound, and backed away. Two people rose quickly, gathering their things like they had been waiting for an excuse to leave. A human teenager pulled her backpack tighter and whispered something to her mother, who nodded and guided her away. The bench that had been half occupied became almost completely clear in seconds. The alien woman paused. It was only a brief pause, but Elias could see it. The tiny hesitation in her step, the slight angle of her head as she looked at the seats and then at the people moving away. She did not look angry. She did not look offended. She looked like someone who had expected this and still wished it would not happen. Elias' teacup felt heavy in his hand. He told himself it was not his job to fix every moment of discomfort in the galaxy. He told himself people were cautious for reasons. He told himself maybe her species had a reputation he didn't know about. But there was no alarm, no security alert, no warning signs, just silence, space, and avoidance. Elias took a slow breath. He set his cup down on a nearby ledge. He walked toward the bench. As he approached, he noticed small details that made her seem even more real. The light tendrils were not random. They moved in patterns, curling and unrolling as if they were a language. The filaments of her cloak reacted to her steps, drifting aside and then returning like a gentle tide. Her eyes were large and dark, reflecting the bright station lights with a faint star-like sheen. She looked up when he came within a few steps. Her posture straightened, careful. She shifted her small case slightly, holding it in both hands. Elias slowed, making sure his body language was calm. Humans had their own reputation sometimes, too direct, too loud, too fearless for their own good. He didn't want to startle her. He reached the bench and sat down in the empty space beside her. For a second, everything around them felt louder. The announcements, the footsteps, the distant laughter from a cafe. Elias could feel eyes on him. A few, then more. Not everyone, but enough to make the air feel tight. The alien woman did not move away. She stared at him, still and bright, her light tendrils drawing closer to her head like shy smoke. Elias offered a small smile. "Hi," he said, keeping his voice soft. "I'm Elias. You can sit here, it's fine." Her head tilted. The tendrils flickered. Her lips, or the shape that served as lips, parted slightly. A sound came out. It was not a word Elias recognized. It was more like a long exhale shaped into notes. The station's translation system on Elias' earpiece clicked once, tried to process, and then emitted a faint error tone. "Okay," Elias said, nodding as if the translation had worked perfectly. "That was nice to meet you too." Her light shifted, dimming just a fraction. Not in a scary way, in a tired way, Elias tapped his earpiece. "Translation system," he murmured, "identify speaker." A calm, automated voice replied in his ear. "Unknown language, no match found, manual assistance recommended." "Manual assistance," Elias repeated, staring ahead at the docking ring to keep his tone light. "Yeah, that tracks." The alien woman made another sound, shorter this time. Elias felt it in his chest more than he heard it. It was like a low chord from a musical instrument. He turned toward her a little, careful not to invade her space. "I don't understand you yet," he said, "but you don't have to stand alone. If you're waiting for a ship, you can wait here." She watched him closely. Her eyes did not blink the way human eyes did. Her gaze was steady, like someone studying a puzzle. Elias lifted his hands slightly, palms visible, a universal gesture across many cultures for "I'm not a threat." "Do you have a ticket or a destination? I can help you find the right gate." Her tendrils of light uncurled, then curled again. She looked down at the small case in her hands, touched it gently, and then looked back at him. Another sound came, longer and layered, like two notes at once. The earpiece clicked again, failed again. Elias chuckled quietly. "Right, we're doing this without words." He reached slowly into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, station-issued stylus. He opened his tablet and turned it so the screen faced her. With the stylus, he drew a simple question mark. Then he drew a crude little ship and pointed at it, then at the gate. He kept the drawings simple. No fancy icons, just basic shapes. The alien woman stared at the tablet, then at him. Her tendrils brightened, and a soft glow spread along the edges of her cloak filaments. She made a sound that this time seemed lighter, almost amused. Elias felt relief. "Good, laughing is universal enough." He drew a stick figure of a person and then another stick figure sitting beside them. He pointed to himself, then to her, then tapped the drawing. She leaned slightly closer, not touching, but near enough that Elias could see tiny patterns moving under the surface of her skin like slow constellations. She lifted one long finger and touched the screen carefully, as if expecting it to react. When her finger touched the glass, the tablet's surface sensor beeped softly. She traced over his rough stick figures. Then she drew something of her own. Her shape was not a stick figure. It was a tall form with flowing lines and a halo of dots around the head. She drew the dots carefully, one by one, as if each had meaning. Elias watched, genuinely fascinated. "That's you?" he asked, gently pointing. She made a soft sound and her light tendrils pulsed once. Elias nodded. "Okay, you." He pointed to himself and drew a simple human figure with messy hair and a tired slouch. He added a tiny cup in the figure's hand. He looked at her and raised his eyebrows like a question. Her glow shifted again, warmer. She made a sound that reminded Elias of a small chime. Elias' stomach unclenched. For the first time since he had seen the crowd part, he felt like the air was normal again. He glanced around. People were still watching, but the tension had changed. Curiosity was replacing fear. A few travelers had stopped pretending not to stare. Some whispered not unkindly, just uncertain. A station security officer stood near a pillar, arms folded, observing. Elias met the officer's eyes and gave a small shrug that meant, "No trouble here." The officer did not move, but he also didn't intervene. The alien woman, Salith, Elias guessed, though he didn't know her name yet, sat very still while she drew. When she finished, she pushed the tablet slightly toward Elias as if offering it back. Elias studied her drawing. He didn't understand it fully, but he recognized intention. Symbols, patterns, a kind of order that was not random. The halo of dots around her head looked like the drifting light tendrils she carried. The lines around her body looked like her cloak filaments. He tapped his stylus against his lip. "So you communicate with light?" he asked. "Or feeling?" He wasn't sure why that second word came to mind. Maybe because her sounds felt like they belonged in the chest. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and the tendrils pulsed again, slower this time, like a heartbeat. Elias took that as a close enough. He opened a station app designed for quick travel assistance and switched it to a picture mode. It displayed icons for food, restroom, medical, information, and gate. He pointed to the gate icon. She looked at it. The light around her head swirled, then calmed. Elias pointed down the terminal toward the info desk. "If you want, we can go there. They have better translation tools. Or we can sit here until your ship boards, no pressure." He waited. She did not stand. She did not gesture toward the desk. Instead, she slowly set her small case on her lap and turned her head toward the large glass wall. Beyond it, ships drifted in slow docking patterns, guided by invisible fields and careful station control. Elias followed her gaze. "Pretty," he said. "Sometimes I forget how lucky we are to see this every day." Her tendrils of light extended slightly, reaching toward the glass as if they wanted to touch the distant ships. Then they drew back. Elias felt a strange emotion rise in him, something between sadness and stubborn hope. He didn't know her story, but he could already see the shape of it. Someone arriving alone, someone used to empty seats. He shifted on the bench, making sure there was still space between them, making sure she didn't feel trapped. "You can just rest," he said. "I'll be here." Minutes passed. The station continued to move around them. A vendor pushed a cart of warm, bread-like snacks through the aisle. A group of students from a research academy hurried past, their uniforms bright. Somewhere, a child laughed. Elias sat quietly, letting the silence be comfortable instead of awkward. He kept his posture open, his hands relaxed. He didn't stare at her. He looked out at the ships and sometimes down at his tablet, and sometimes at the ceiling lights shifting from pale blue to soft green. After a while, he felt a gentle sensation like warmth near his shoulder, though nothing touched him. He turned his head. The alien woman's tendrils of light had drifted slightly toward him. Not wrapping, not grabbing, just hovering near like a cautious animal testing safety. Elias smiled to himself. "Yeah," he whispered, more to the universe than to her. "That's it. You're allowed to exist near people. Crazy idea, right?" She made a quiet sound, almost like agreement. Elias didn't know yet that this small act would echo beyond Station Eos. He didn't know that other travelers would remember the sight of a human sitting down when everyone else moved away. He didn't know that the station's cameras would catch it, and that the clip would later be shared with captions in dozens of languages. All he knew was that the bench was no longer empty beside her, and for the first time since she arrived, she did not look like someone bracing for rejection. She looked like someone who might finally be waiting for something good. The bench near Gate 9 became a quiet island in the middle of Station Eos. Elias did not plan for it to feel that way. He only planned to sit and wait. But as time passed, something about the space around him and the glowing alien woman seemed to change how people moved nearby. Travelers still walked past, still glanced, still whispered, but fewer of them rushed away. A few slowed down. Some stayed close enough to listen. The alien woman sat with her small case on her lap, her light tendrils drifting in slow, gentle circles. Elias noticed that the color of her glow had changed. When she first arrived, it had been pale and cool, like early morning fog. Now it was warmer, softer, like candlelight. He wondered if that meant something. Elias shifted on the bench and checked the time on his tablet. He still had a while before his shift ended. Normally, he would use this quiet moment to answer messages or write reports, but he found himself leaving the screen dark. This felt more important, even if he couldn't explain why. He glanced at her again, careful not to stare. Her eyes were fixed on the flow of people moving through the terminal. Sometimes her tendrils reacted to a loud sound or a sudden movement, curling closer to her head. Sometimes they stretched out when someone laughed nearby or when a soft song played over the station's speakers. Elias leaned back slightly. "You feel things, don't you?" he said quietly, not expecting an answer. Her head turned toward him. The light around her pulsed once. Elias took that as a yes. He thought about the translation system again. Station EIS had one of the best in the sector, trained on thousands of languages and communication styles, but it had failed her completely. That bothered him more than it should have. He opened a deeper tool on his tablet, one that allowed manual input and pattern learning. It wasn't something he used often. It took time and patience, and most travelers didn't stay long enough to make it worth trying. But she was still here. Elias angled the tablet toward her again. He tapped a button and the screen showed a simple blank field with a soft, pulsing light in the center. "This listens," he explained. "Not just to sound, to rhythm, to patterns." He felt a little silly saying it, but it was true. The system could learn from repeated input, even emotional tone, if it was fed enough examples. She studied the screen. Her tendrils drifted closer to it, then pulled back. Slowly, she made a sound. It was low and steady, like a long breath. The tablet's light pulsed in response. Elias' heart jumped. "Okay," he whispered, "that's something." She made another sound, slightly higher. The light pulsed differently. The tablet displayed a small message. "Pattern recognized, data stored." Elias grinned. "You see, we're getting somewhere." They spent several minutes like that. She made sounds and light shifts. The tablet listened and learned. Elias added small notes, labeling what he thought each sound might mean. He wasn't sure if he was right, but he wasn't sure it mattered yet. What mattered was the effort. A soft voice interrupted them. Excuse me." Elias looked up. A young human woman stood a few steps away, holding a cup of something that smelled sweet and warm. She had short hair and a station badge clipped to her jacket. "I just wanted to say," she continued, "that's really nice what you're doing." Elias blinked. "Oh, thanks, I think." The woman smiled, then looked at the alien. "Does she understand us?" Elias shrugged gently. "Not in the usual way, but she understands something." The alien woman watched the exchange closely. Her glow shifted, curious. The station worker hesitated, then took a small step closer. She held up her cup. "Would she like some? It's just warm fruit tea, no stimulants." Elias looked at the alien. "Drink?" he asked, making a small lifting motion with his hand like bringing a cup to his mouth. The alien tilted her head. Her tendrils pulsed, uncertain. Elias smiled. "We don't know, it's okay if not." The woman waited, patient. After a moment, the alien made a soft sound and extended one finger. She touched the side of the cup just barely. Her light flared brighter, then dimmed again. Elias let out a quiet breath. "I think that's a no, but thank you." The station worker laughed softly. "Fair enough." She stepped back, but she didn't walk away. She leaned against a nearby pillar and watched instead. More people started to do the same. Not crowding, not staring, just staying within the area like they didn't want to miss whatever this was becoming. Elias felt a strange pressure in his chest, not uncomfortable, just heavy with meaning. He turned back to the alien. "I'm Elias," he said again, pointing to himself. "Elias." He tapped the tablet and drew his name in simple letters. Then he pointed to her and raised his eyebrows. She stared at the letters, then at him. Her tendrils brightened, swirling in a more complex pattern than before. She made a sound, long and layered, with a gentle rise at the end. The tablet's screen flashed. New pattern. High-confidence match, displaying phonetic approximation. The screen showed a word, Salith. Elias froze. He looked at the tablet. He looked at her. "Salith," he said softly. Her glow flared warm gold. Elias laughed, a short, surprised sound. "Oh, that's your name." "Hi, Salith," the people nearby murmured. The station worker near the pillar straightened, eyes wide. Salith placed one hand, long-fingered and glowing, over the center of her chest. Then she extended it slightly toward Elias, not touching, just offering the gesture. Elias mirrored her, placing his hand over his own chest. "Nice to meet you." The tablet chimed quietly, as if pleased with itself. Elias didn't care how good the technology was. What mattered was that something had crossed the gap. Salith's posture relaxed. Her tendrils drifted outward again, slower and more open than before. The warmth of her glow spread across the bench, soft and steady. Elias leaned back, feeling like he had just finished running a long distance without realizing it. "So," he said, looking at the ships outside again, "where are you headed?" He drew a small star on the tablet, then several dots connected by a line like a path. Salith studied it. She drew her own marks. They were not stars or dots, but flowing shapes like currents in water. Elias didn't understand the map, but he understood the idea. "You're traveling far," he said. Her glow dimmed slightly, then brightened again. Elias nodded. "Yeah, I get that." A soft chime sounded over the station's speakers. "Attention, travelers. Boarding for dock ring 3 will begin in 10 minutes. Salith's tendrils reacted instantly, curling and pulsing. She looked toward the corridor that led to the docking lanes. Elias followed her gaze. "Is that you?" he asked. She hesitated, then made a short sound. The tablet translated it into a simple symbol, an arrow pointing forward. Elias stood up slowly. "I can walk with you if you want." He didn't reach for her. He just stood there, giving her space to decide. For a moment, he thought she might stay seated. But then she rose, her filaments lifting around her like a soft wave. She picked up her small case and took one careful step forward. Then she stopped. She turned back and looked at the bench, at the place where she had sat alone and then not alone. Her tendrils pulsed, and a gentle wave of warmth rolled through the air. Elias felt it on his skin like standing near a heater, but softer. Emotional, not physical. The station worker near the pillar placed a hand over her mouth. Salith turned back to Elias and took another step. This time she walked beside him. They moved through the terminal together, not touching but close enough to feel like a pair. People watched them pass. Some smiled, some looked thoughtful. A few even stepped aside, not out of fear but out of respect. Elias guided her toward dock ring 3, pointing out signs and pathways. He kept his pace slow, matching her careful steps. At the entrance to the docking corridor, a station officer checked boarding passes. Elias showed his staff badge and explained quickly, "She's with me, translation assistance." The officer glanced at Salith, then back at Elias. He nodded. "All right, just don't miss your own shift." Elias smiled. "Wouldn't dream of it." The corridor was quieter than the main terminal. The walls were smooth and curved, glowing with soft navigation lights. The hum of docked ships vibrated gently through the floor. Salith walked slowly, taking it all in. Her tendrils brushed the air, reacting to the new space. Elias stopped a short distance from a sleek, unfamiliar ship docked at the far end. Its surface looked like dark glass, reflecting the corridor lights in long, curved lines. Salith turned to face him. She made a sound, soft and layered. The tablet, still in Elias' hand, chimed. It displayed a simple message. "Gratitude." Elias swallowed. "You're welcome," he said quietly. She lifted her hand again, the same gesture over her chest. Then she reached out just a little, her glowing fingers hovering near Elias' shoulder. He didn't move away. Her fingers didn't touch him, but the warmth reached him anyway. Then she turned and walked toward her ship. Elias stood there until the hatch closed behind her and the corridor lights shifted back to their normal calm pattern. He exhaled, long and slow. When he returned to the terminal, he noticed something different. A few travelers were sitting closer together. A human child was showing a picture to a tall alien with careful enthusiasm. The station worker who had offered the tea was talking to a pair of off-world traders, laughing. Elias looked back at the bench near Gate 9. It was empty now, but it didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt like a place where something had started. Station Eos did not return to normal after Salith left. At least, not the kind of normal Elias Mercer was used to. He noticed it the moment he walked back toward Gate 9. People were sitting closer together than before. A human woman was showing pictures on her tablet to a tall, scaled traveler who leaned in with careful interest. Two children from different species were rolling a small light ball between them, laughing when it bounced in strange directions. Even the station's soft background noise seemed different, warmer, like the place itself had relaxed. Elias slowed his steps. He told himself it was just coincidence. A busy station always had moments like this. But deep down, he felt something had shifted, even if he couldn't measure it with a tablet or a report. He sat down at the same bench where he and Salith had waited. The spot beside him was empty again, but it didn't feel the same kind of empty. It felt open. Elias rested his hands on his knees and looked out at the docking ring through the glass wall. Ships came and went, lights blinking in calm patterns, guided by invisible systems that made travel between stars look simple. He wondered where Salith was now. He wondered if her journey would be easier after today, or if Station Eos would just be another small memory in a long line of lonely stops. His tablet chimed. A message appeared from the station's central system. Cultural Liaison Mercer, request for feedback. Recent interaction flagged for unusual emotional response patterns in surrounding travelers. Elias raised an eyebrow. Of course it was. He opened the message and typed a short reply. Traveler was from unknown species, communication through emotional and light-based signals. Interaction positive, recommend further study, not security concern. He hesitated, then added another line. Also recommend creating open seating areas near arrival gates. People respond well to shared space. He sent it before he could overthink it. A few minutes later, another chime sounded. This time, it wasn't his tablet. It was a soft musical tone from the station's public system. Attention travelers, a new cultural exchange space has been designated near Gate 9. All species welcome. Seating and refreshment units available. Elias blinked. He looked around and saw a small service drone rolling toward the bench area, unfolding additional seating panels from its sides. Another drone followed, placing a low table with a simple refreshment unit that offered water and basic snacks safe for most species. He laughed quietly. That was fast, people noticed. A few curious travelers approached, not sure what to do. A human couple sat down first, then a floating Telnari who settled into a hovering seat. A short, furry alien climbed onto a bench, its long ears twitching as it looked around. Elias didn't take charge. He didn't announce anything. He just stayed there, present, like an anchor in a growing circle. He remembered how Salith's tendrils had reached toward him, how her light had warmed when she felt safe. He wondered if safety was something that could spread. Across the station, in a quiet docking corridor, Salith stood inside her ship. The interior was smooth and dim, lit by gentle lines of light that moved along the walls like slow rivers. The ship was not large. It didn't need to be. It was built for one traveler and a small cargo of delicate instruments and memory cores. Salith placed her small case in a slot near the central console. The ship responded with a soft hum, recognizing her presence. The walls brightened slightly, adjusting to her emotional state. She did not start the launch sequence. Instead, she stood still, her tendrils drifting in thoughtful patterns. The memory of the bench, the human, and the open space around them echoed inside her. Her species did not remember things the way humans did. They remembered through feeling, through resonance. And the feeling she carried now was different from the quiet loneliness she had known at other stations. It was something like connection. Salith moved to the ship's communication interface. It was not a screen or a keyboard. It was a pool of light that responded to her presence, shifting as her tendrils dipped into it. She sent a signal, not a message in words, a message in emotional pattern. It traveled faster than sound, faster than light, through the networks her species had woven between stars long before humans had left their own world. On Station Elias felt a strange sensation in his chest. He paused mid-sip of water and frowned slightly. It wasn't pain. It wasn't fear. It was like someone had gently tapped on the inside of his ribs, asking for attention. He shook his head. Okay, that's new, the tablet on his lap chimed. Incoming unknown signal. Emotional data stream detected. Source, Dock Ring 3. Elias' breath caught. Salith, the tablet's screen filled with soft colors and moving patterns. Not words, not images, just feelings translated into light and motion. Elias didn't understand all of it, but he understood enough. There was gratitude, there was hope. There was something like an invitation. He looked up at the growing group around the cultural exchange space. Humans, aliens, travelers who had never planned to sit together, now sharing snacks and awkward smiles. He lifted the tablet and turned it so they could see the flowing colors. What's that? Someone asked. I think, Elias said slowly, it's a hello from very far away. The colors shifted, spreading across the screen in warm waves. A tall, blue-skinned traveler leaned closer. It feels nice. A human child nodded. It's like a hug but with lights. Elias smiled. Yeah, that sounds about right. Word spread, not in a dramatic way, not through headlines or alarms, just through people talking. Through travelers carrying the story to their ships and telling it in their own way at the next station. There was a human who sat down when no one else did. There was an alien who spoke in light and feeling. There was a bench that became a meeting place. On a distant station, a merchant left an empty seat beside them instead of guarding it. On a research outpost, a scientist tried to learn a new greeting instead of relying on a translation device. On a long-haul transport, a pilot invited a quiet passenger into the cockpit to watch the stars. Small things, but they added up. Elia's shift ended, but he stayed longer. He helped a nervous traveler find their gate. He listened to a story from a trader who had spent 10 years crossing the same route and was tired of seeing the same empty faces. He watched as a group of students tried to teach a six-armed alien how to play a simple card game. At some point, he realized he wasn't tired anymore. Later that cycle, in the quiet of his small station apartment, Elias sat by the window and looked out at the stars. The station lights reflected in the glass, mixing with the distant glow of passing ships. His tablet chimed again, another emotional data stream. This one was weaker, farther away, but it carried the same warm pattern. Salith. Elias pressed his hand against the glass. "You're still out there," he murmured. He didn't know if she could sense him the way he sensed her. But he felt connected anyway, like a thread stretched between 2 points in a very large galaxy. On Salith's ship, far from Station Eos now, the stars slid past in silent rivers of light. She stood at the center of her vessel, tendrils moving in calm, steady patterns. Her message had been received, not just by Elias but by others, by systems that learned from feeling instead of code. Her species had been travelers for a long time, observers, listeners, often unwelcome. But now, in the vast network of emotional signals that flowed between her kind, a new pattern was spreading. A pattern shaped like a bench, like a seat left open, like a human who stayed. Salith turned her ship slightly, adjusting her course. Not away from her destination, but toward a new one she had not planned before. A world where humans lived, not because she had been invited, but because she felt she might be welcome. Back on Station Eos, the cultural exchange space near Gate 9 became a permanent feature. The station added soft lighting and more seats. They installed a small display that showed rotating emotional patterns from different species, teaching travelers how to recognize basic feelings without needing words. Elias helped design it. He kept the drawings simple. A dot for a person, a line for connection, a space in between. One evening, as he finished his shift, a new traveler arrived, tall, luminous, tendrils of light drifting gently around their head. The crowd paused, not in fear, in recognition. Someone moved their bag off a seat. Someone else smiled. Elias watched from a distance as a human child tugged on their parent's sleeve and pointed. "Look, they're like the light lady." The parent nodded. "Go say hi." The child approached, holding out a small snack and a shy grin. The alien hesitated, then their glow warmed. Elias closed his eyes for a moment and let the sound of the station wash over him. This wasn't about one bench. It wasn't even about one alien or one human. It was about a choice. To sit, to stay, to make space. Somewhere far between the stars, Salith felt a gentle wave of warmth and knew, without seeing it, that the pattern was still growing. And for the first time in her long journey, she did not feel like she was traveling alone. The message from the galactic network arrived on Station Eos during the quiet hours, when most travelers were asleep, and the lights in the main terminal were set to their soft night colors. Elias Mercer was at the cultural exchange space, sitting alone on the familiar bench with a cup of warm water in his hands. He liked this time of the cycle. The station felt slower, gentler, like it was breathing instead of rushing. His tablet chimed. He expected another emotional stream from Salith, or a system update, or a reminder about a meeting he had forgotten. Instead, the screen displayed a symbol he had only seen in training modules, a spiral of light surrounded by a circle of stars, the Galactic Empathy Accord. Elias nearly dropped his cup. He tapped the screen with careful fingers, afraid it might disappear if he moved too fast. The message opened, written in simple standard language. Human representative requested, cultural origin, Station Eos. Subject, first contact empathy role. Reason, pattern of emotional integration across multiple systems. Elias stared. He read it again, and again. First contact empathy role meant something very specific. It meant being a bridge between civilizations that did not share language, biology, or even the same way of thinking. It meant listening before speaking, sitting before standing, making space instead of making rules. It was not a position given to powerful worlds or advanced empires. It was given to those who knew how to wait. Elias exhaled slowly and looked around the empty exchange space. The extra seats were neatly arranged. The small display of emotional patterns glowed softly, showing a warm, slow-moving wave that meant welcome in 3 different species systems. All I did was sit down, he whispered. The station did not answer. But somewhere far away, among the stars, Salith felt a familiar warmth ripple through her tendrils. Her ship had reached the edge of a human-inhabited system. The stars here were different, brighter, younger. The planets spun with a kind of restless energy she had not felt near older, quieter civilizations. She stood at her console, her light reflecting off the curved walls of her ship. The emotional network of her people hummed softly in her mind, filled with new patterns. Human patterns, stories of open seats, of shared food, of slow, careful conversations made of drawings, gestures, and patience. Her species had named the pattern. They called it the staying. Salith adjusted her course toward a small human world, not a major hub or a powerful capital. Just a place where people lived, worked, and watched the stars from their windows. She did not want to arrive in a hall of leaders. She wanted to arrive at a bench. Back on Station Eos, Elias walked through the main terminal in a daze. He passed familiar vendors, familiar gates, familiar faces. People nodded at him, some even smiled like they recognized him from somewhere. A few travelers whispered when they saw him. "That's the bench guy," someone said softly. Elias pretended not to hear. He reached the station administration office, where a calm, round-faced alien named Torin managed cultural affairs. Torin's species looked like smooth stone sculptures that had learned how to move and blink. Torin glanced up from their console. "You received the Accord message." It was not a question. Elias nodded. "I think they sent it to the wrong person." Torin made a slow, thoughtful sound. "They did not." Elias rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm not a diplomat, I'm not a leader, I just help people find gates and talk to travelers who don't fit in the system." Torin's eyes softened. "Yes, that is why they chose you." Elias sat down heavily in the chair across from Torin's desk. "What do they actually want me to do?" Torin tapped their console, bringing up a star map filled with glowing points. "They want you to travel, to go to stations and worlds where first contact is happening, to sit. To listen, to show others what humans do when they do not understand something." Elias swallowed. "And what is that?" Torin tilted their head. "You make room." The words landed in Elias' chest with quiet weight. That same cycle, Station Eos received another visitor. The arrival corridor lights shifted as a sleek, dark glass ship docked at Gate 7. Travelers paused, curious but not tense. They had seen ships like this before, or at least heard stories. The hatch opened. Salith stepped out. Her glow was warmer now, more confident. Her tendrils drifted in wide, open patterns instead of tight, cautious loops. She carried the same small case, but her posture was different. She was not bracing for rejection. She was looking for someone. She moved through the terminal, past shops and signs and clusters of travelers. People noticed her and did something new. They smiled. They stepped aside not to avoid her, but to give her space to walk. A human child waved. Salith lifted her hand and mimicked the gesture, her glow flickering with gentle amusement. She reached Gate 9. The cultural exchange space was full. Humans and aliens sat together, sharing food, games, and quiet conversation. The emotional display glowed in soft, welcoming colors. The bench, the original bench, stood at the center like a small, unremarkable monument. Salith paused. Her tendrils pulsed with something that felt like recognition. Elias arrived a moment later, still half lost in thought from his meeting with Torin. He almost walked past the exchange space without looking. Then he felt the warmth. He turned. Salith stood near the bench, her light reflecting in the glass wall behind her. For a second, neither of them moved. Then Elias laughed, a quiet, disbelieving sound. "You came back." Salith made a long, layered tone. The tablet in Elias' pocket chimed, translating it into a simple phrase. "Not back, toward." Elias felt his throat tighten. "That's better than back." They sat down on the bench together. People nearby noticed, but they did not stare. They simply made room, shifting their chairs, opening their circle. Salith placed her small case on the bench between them and opened it. Inside were glowing shapes like crystal fragments made of light instead of stone. Each one pulsed with a different emotional pattern. She picked one up and held it out to Elias. The tablet translated, "Memory for you." Elias accepted it carefully. It was warm in his hand, like holding sunlight filtered through water. As he touched it, feelings washed over him. Loneliness in empty stations, hope in a human smile, comfort in a shared bench. He blinked back sudden tears. "Salith," her glow softened. Around them, others felt it too. The emotional display shifted, reflecting the wave moving through the space. People grew quiet, not sad, but thoughtful. Elias took a slow breath. "They asked me to travel," he said, "to go to other places, to do what we did here." Salith's tendrils stilled, then moved in a slow, careful pattern. "Good," the tablet displayed. Elias chuckled. "You're not worried I'll mess it up?" Her light flickered in what he had learned was amusement. "You already started, the rest is just walking." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Salith stood. Elias looked up. "Leaving again?" She shook her head slowly. "Staying for a time." The word staying glowed on the tablet, surrounded by a warm halo. Elias stood too. "Then I guess I'll see you here when I come back." Salith reached out, her glowing fingers hovering near his hand. This time Elias reached back. Their hands did not touch, but the warmth did. Later, as Elias boarded a transport ship bound for a distant station where a new species had just made first contact, he looked out the window at Station ES growing smaller. He saw the exchange space as a tiny patch of light. A bench. A beginning. On the journey, he sat beside strangers. He drew pictures. He listened to sounds that were not words and learned what they meant anyway. On a small moon station, he helped a nervous alien child find their parent. On a crowded hub, he convinced a tired security officer to sit and share a meal with a traveler who had been waiting for hours. Stories followed him, not of a hero, of a human who sat down. Back on Station ES, Salith continued to visit the exchange space every cycle. She spoke with travelers. She shared her memory crystals. She learned human games and taught her own people's ways of feeling without speaking. The pattern grew. Stations across the galaxy created open spaces like the one at Gate 9. They called them different names in different languages, but they all meant the same thing. A place to stay, a place to sit, a place to be together. Years later, in a quiet corner of a distant station, Elias sat on another bench, older now, lines of travel and listening etched into his face. A small alien child climbed up beside him and held out a glowing crystal. Elias smiled and accepted it. He felt warmth, connection. A familiar, gentle wave. Somewhere far away, Salith looked up at the stars and felt the same. The galaxy did not remember humanity for conquering worlds or building the biggest ships. It remembered them for something much simpler. They were the ones who made room. They were the ones who stayed. They were the ones who sat down when no one else did.